By the last week of July 1982, top echelons in Kenya's intelligence machinery, then known as the Special Branch, had been made aware of a planned mutiny against President Daniel Toroitich arap Moi's then 4-year-old administration. The plan, largely involving soldiers drawn from the Kenya Air Force, had a house numbered K27 in Umoja area of Kenya's capital Nairobi as its ground zero. Yet this known knowledge strictly remained between few individuals, among them President Moi, head of the Special Branch James Kanyotu, and top military chiefs, including then Chief of the General Staff, General Jackson Kimeu Mulinge. "74-year-old Colonel retired Hussein Ahmed Farah was by then a flying instructor based at the Eastleigh Air Force Base, which is the current Moi Air Base. He was of the rank of captain, having served for 8 years. In the last week of July 1982, Captain Farah was in Nyeri, where he found himself at the heart of one of the notable events of the week, happening simultaneously in different parts of the country.
That's something I can never forget. I was going back to 1981. 1981, we had the OAU conference in Nairobi. I was assigned as an ADC, AD camp, to one of the visiting heads of state, the ones who are coming for the conference. Several parades which were there, I was getting nominated always to go and do the parade. For some reason, I was seen to be a bit good in parades. And I kept on getting assigned to these duties, and I was feeling that I was losing my flying time. And 1982, the base commander nominated me to be on the parade at the showground in Nyeri.
The base commander is Eastleigh.
The base commander in Eastleigh, it was called Kenya Air Force Eastleigh then. It later became Moi Air Base. And I went to him and I complained. I said, "Sir, I'm spending so much time on parades." And he said, "I promise you this will be the last one you'll go to."
Oh no.
Yes, it was a miracle. It almost became the last one. Yes. So I went to the parade. I was not the parade commander. I was the deputy commander of the parade. The parade commander was a gentleman. He passed away. He rose to the rank of a major general, and he was called John Serem, was the commander, and I was his deputy on that parade.
President Moi was not only going to officially open the Nyeri ASK show, but he was also scheduled to spend the night that Friday at the Sagana State Lodge. Throughout their rehearsals before the D-Day, they would be putting up at the Kenya Police Training College in Kiganjo. Meanwhile, at the northwestern part of Kenya, a second simultaneous event that would later turn historic was the marking of the military war games in Lodwar, an event headed by the Kenya Army, and that would see almost all of the fighting units of the army, such as the infantry and the artillery, all head out to Lodwar for the week-long activities. Major retired Charles Washira was at the time a captain, serving in the 50th Air Cavalry Regiment, which later became the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion, or just 50 ACB. He was among the troops in Lodwar.
There was an exercise that was organized by the army in Lodwar, West Pokot, and all that. And the Air Force would take part as a supporting unit, because the Air Force always support the army. Because even if you bomb somewhere, unless the army comes on the ground, there's no you can say you have held that place. You haven't. So we were in West Pokot, Lodwar. We had access there.
The 50 ACB was the first ever aviation unit of the Kenya Army and had been formed just slightly more than 3 years earlier to offer air support to the ground units in any mission. They were based at the Embakasi garrison, sharing a base with the Kenya Air Force's Ground Air Defense Unit, simply known as GADU. This meant that Captain Charles Wachira and his other 50 ACB colleagues in Lodwar, such as Captain Joe Mwerore, were in the military war games with their helicopters, offering support to the ground troops.
We are simulating fighting a neighboring country, whichever it is, you know, when you do such a thing. And Kisumu was the headquarters of the neighboring country. And Hawk fighters aircraft were based in Kisumu, supporting being the enemy aircraft. The F5 were in Nanyuki, being the Frederick aircraft.
The military activities also meant that for over a week, only a negligible number of Kenya Army personnel had been left at the barracks in Nairobi, be it at the Langata barracks or at the Kahawa garrison. In fact, those left were largely technical support staff such as drivers, technicians, mechanics, cooks, and so on and so forth. Those that ordinarily don't go to the battlefront.
A lot of, fine men and women even today who do excellent job for the country, but nobody knows. Yes, they don't shout about it. Nobody knows about it.
Major retired Unshur Mohammed was an officer serving as a pilot in the 50 ACB, then at the rank of captain, but was among those left in Nairobi as his colleagues were in the north. The third simultaneous event was also happening at the capital, Nairobi. This was the nearing of the coup. Chief coup plotters led by Senior Private Hezekiah Ochuka, assisted by Sergeant Pancras Oteyo Okumu and other rebel but junior soldiers, had finished laying out the plan at the house number K27 in Umoja and had successfully tapped the support of other junior soldiers at the Eastleigh Air Base, few more from the Embakasi garrison, and some from the Nanyuki Air Base, which is present-day Laikipia Air Base. Lieutenant General retired Adan Mulata was by then a junior officer serving as captain at the Kenya Air Force based at the Eastleigh Air Base, only 3 years into the service, and who would in the coming few hours witness the first killing of the coup, defy orders by the rebels to fly, be sentenced to death by Ochuka, and survive to later rise and become a 3-star general who exited the Kenya Defense Force after 43 years of service.
So at that stage, we were just beginning conversion on the PIOMA, not fully qualified yet. So while there, of course, the other pilots are training at different levels, and here we are converting also and going on occasional flights with them. Not missions, training again.
Back to Nyeri, where the ASK show was to happen on the last week of July. After days of rehearsals with military precision, the 145-man parade under the leadership of Major Serem and Captain Farah would be making their last rehearsals on Wednesday, the 28th of July, before the actual presidential day, which was the 30th of July.
Opening by the president was to be done on a Friday. And on a Wednesday, General Mulinge, who was the chief of general staff, and the then Air Force commander, who was called Major General Karaoke, came to review our parade, so that they see it is okay for the president. And once we did the rehearsal, General Mulinge said he was satisfied with our parade, and he told us to dismiss the men who were doing the parade.
On standby for further instructions,
we walked, Major General Serem, or that time Major Serem, and I was a captain, we walked and came and stood next to the two generals. And we had the conversation. We had the conversation of General Mulinge asking General Karaoke about somebody who was called Lieutenant Mwambura, and that he should be arrested. Lieutenant Mwambura was working in Nanyuki Air Base at that time, and he was in the logistics department, the stores. And in my opinion, I just thought, oh, he must have lost some things, and that's why he's being arrested. So General Kariuki tells him, no, sir, I'll get him arrested on Monday. And the story ended there.
This was 4 days before the coup, and no one, at least not Major John Serem and Captain Farah, had any idea that a mutiny was cooking. Fast forward to Friday, the 30th of July, 1982. In Lodwar, the war games were on their second last day. A handful of Air Force personnel were also present to offer support to the military. Civilians in the lakeside city of Kisumu reported to have witnessed intense air activities from the Kenya Armed Forces, not knowing that it was part of the games and the military activities going on up north.
Even later on, you heard there was some buildings the windows had cracked. I don't know how far truth it is, but there's some truth in that because there was sonic boom. And when you, a 5 sonic boom, running away from Hawk, I think it was by air or something. But Air Force can confirm that because it came in Parliament that there were cracks in houses because of sonic boom.
Meanwhile, in Nyeri, President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi was making rounds in the stands at the Nyeri ASK show. Among those accompanying him was Central Province Provincial Commissioner David Musila. After visiting the stands, President Moi was meant to inspect the parade before officially opening the show with a speech at the pavilion.
The parade was done, I think, about 2-ish, 2 or 2:30. I can't remember exactly the time. You know, once we did the parade and the president has gone back to address the public, you know, we stood on one side listening to the president, and the president went through his speech. He finished, and he was to go to his convoy and depart.
Known to many was the official program. That after the official opening of the ASK show, President Moi was to head to Sagana State Lodge for the night, but known to PC David Musila only, after being told by the president, the head of state would not spend the night at the Sagana State Lodge, but would head straight by road to Nakuru, juggling between his Kabarak home and State House, Nakuru. But even before he could board his presidential motorcade, something rather unusual happened.
We're walking out of the place, and suddenly somebody comes on the mic and says, "Wananchi, kaeni rais anarudi kuja." He's coming back to address, to give you a further address.
But he has just addressed.
It was we have never seen anything like that. Once the president stops and finishes and goes, that was it. But now suddenly something strange happened, and the president is coming back, and so the Wananchi went back to sit and listen to the president. So the president comes and now gives a longer story, nothing connected with what has happened, but just, you know, a lot of other things that, you know, the president always had a lot of material to deliver to his people. Any right-thinking person would be wondering, why would the president come back? But apparently there was something, I think, connected with security that made the president come back. The rumor has it later, from what I heard, that some people who were armed tried to join the president's convoy, and they were caught.
Unknown people?
Unknown people, yes.
And with that, Friday is done, and Saturday, the 31st of July, is fast approaching. Unknown to them, the country is now just hours to the coup attempt. The 145-man parade drawn from the Kenya Air Force retired back to the Kenya Police Training College in Kiganjo, hoping to spend Saturday in Nyeri before they are transported back to Nairobi and their other bases on Sunday.
So we suggested to the Air Force that, look, we have been on this thing for quite a while, we're tired, and we'd like to relax on Saturday, and most of the servicemen who have done the parade want to go and visit the show. They didn't have a chance to visit the show. Shows were very interesting those days. I don't know whether it's the same thing today, but in those days it was a very interesting thing because you saw a lot of things. And we were allowed to stay there now Saturday and be picked on a Sunday morning. And they woke up Saturday morning, gave transport to the service personnel who wanted to go to the show. And because they were all armed, we had now to collect the arms. We asked the Air Force. The Air Force had a helicopter transiting through the place with the firearms guys, and they came with the documents, and they recorded all the firearms, and they took the firearms from the service personnel so that now they're free to move without a bunduki, without a gun. And the firearms were brought back to Eastleigh.
But this was never to be. They would leave Nyeri as prisoners in a chilling account that we will revisit later in this documentary.
We relaxed in the
As the Air Force servicemen were visiting the stands at the Nyeri ASK show on that Saturday, the 31st of July 1982, the Eastleigh Air Base went about its normal operations with nothing suspicious. At least, that is according to Lieutenant General retired Adan Mulata, then serving as a captain, but was totally in the dark despite being present at Eastleigh Air Base.
Everything was just like a very normal weekend. I didn't sense anything. I did not notice any certain set of actions.
Yes.
Neither did I hear. You get it? So very, very usual, normal, lazy time for me.
He was at the time on his course to convert into a Puma pilot.
So we were not too busy in the squadron. Once you have finished your training mission, training sortie, you're back in the mess, you know, socializing, playing snooker and so on.
Meanwhile, the military activities in Lodwar had been concluded and the army personnel were starting their journey back to Nairobi. Those in the infantry and artillery units would start hitting the road from Lodwar town to Nairobi, a distance of more than 674 kilometers. At the time, with poor quality roads to and from the northern western part of the country. Captain Charles Washira, Captain Joe Mwirore, among other pilots of the 50th ACB, also started their helicopters ready for the flight back to the Embakasi garrison.
We were among the first people to arrive in Nairobi. The rest of the people, actually it was said people should not come that particular day, like infantry units, artillery units. They should have an overnight at Lodwar or a particular area they wanted, so that they come to Nairobi, they go to their respective areas the following day.
Also flying back was the handful of Air Force pilots who had gone to support the army in those activities. While the Air Force aircrafts landed at the Eastleigh Air Base, the helicopters by the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion went straight to their base at the Embakasi garrison. At the Eastleigh Air Base, young Captain Adan Mulata learnt of the return of the Air Force pilots.
Mid-afternoon, just after 3 or thereabouts, I said I need to stretch back to the mess to spend some time there, back to the station, Eastleigh then, and spend some time there. Then as I was leaving, my friend said, don't forget to bring a cigarette when you come back, you know, that kind of a story, eh? So I told him, fine, I'll bring you cigarettes, left. So walked back to the officers' mess. I found now a large number of the experienced pilots who had just landed a few hours back, while I was at Eastleigh most probably, from that joint military field training exercise around Turkana there, northwestern Kenya. So very excited, chatting, and as a very young pilot, you know, we look up to each other. We like listening to those stories, and they were having fun. So I kept listening, and so it was exactly how the things. Pilots like talking about themselves, their missions, their experiences. It's a way of actually mentoring other aircrew indirectly. You learn and hear from the others as they do so. So those stories, I just, as a very young officer, kept listening to their chats. It was fun, very exciting. I found it interesting. And they were outside in the garden, you know, in the officers' mess. And it was a fun moment for all of us.
Meanwhile, landing at Embakasi Garrison, the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion officers noticed something unusual.
We arrived at Embakasi around 6 in the evening. And we noted that there was a problem because there were so many soldiers of Gadu at the pavilion. You know, pavilion is where the people, you know, Embakasi was an airport. Yes. So there was an officer's mess, sergeant's mess there. And there were very many people. So when they saw us landing, they were jumping, they were clapping, they were waving.
The old Embakasi airport, yes. That was the airport mess. When we were in finals to come and land in our compound where we park our helicopter, all these people came out and came to the waving bay, the Air Force. It was a Sunday, there were a lot. Then we asked ourselves in the radio, because we are in the same community, kwa nini tunapewa VIP leo? Kwa nini wametokea wote? We are talking ourselves kwa radio, because all the helicopters in the same. And we came in a formation, a show of force, you know, to come and land all together. We used to like flying in formation, all of us. Then we asked, kwa nini tumepewa VIP leo? Because the Air Force, wametokea wote wako kwa waving bay.
To understand why the officers from the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion that was that evening landing in Embakasi found the excitement by the Air Force's Ground Air Defense Unit Gadu as unusual, one needs to understand the history between the two units that had for close to 3 years now shared a compound at the Embakasi Garrison.
When we started flying, those soldiers knew that the people who were supposed to fly were Air Force people. The aircraft belonged to Air Force people. When they saw the army flying, they were not happy about it. So we started having problems, even in the officers' mess. When you go in the officers' mess, there is a problem there. The officers there and our officers, there used to be a problem. And because I was the adjutant of 50th Air Cavalry Battalion, the adjutant is a person who deals with the discipline and also assists the commanding officer in day-to-day duties. There used to be problems between our soldiers and the soldiers, particularly when they are coming from outside. They used to have problems there.
What kind of problems?
Problems like maybe they're having a visitors. The visitor is refused to enter the camp. And you find now the soldiers also, our soldiers react. And sometimes there used to be fight at the main gate. The other thing I noted as an adjutant is that the Gadu soldiers were not respecting the officers of Air Cavalry Battalion. And even the officers, it reached a stage whereby we told our commanding officer, we are not going to be going in the officers' mess of Gadu. We have to go to our mess. And it was created hurriedly.
Unknown to them, the grand reception was because some of the Gadu officers who were in the know of the planned events were caught by surprise about this return from Lodwar by the army. Yet it also meant that with the 50 ACB having found Gadu as the original inhabitants of the Embakasi Garrison, most of its personnel did not have their accommodation there and had to commute daily to other bases such as the Kahawa Garrison. Only Captains Washira and Captain Mwiruri had their single quarters at the Embakasi Garrison.
In the evening, me and Mwiruri, Captain Mwiruri, Joe Mwiruri, we are in our single quarters. We are in neighboring rooms. And we said, why can't we go to JKA?
The club?
Yeah, which was not far. You remember like Mulolongo, it was somewhere there. I think it still exists. That was usually our joint where we used to go on the weekends. And we went with Mwiruri because we are sleeping in the camp. And we came, we said, because we were tired, we felt sleepy. We said, let's go back. About 10.
What were you drinking then?
Alcohol.
And we ate meat, and we entertained ourselves there.
At Eastleigh, then Captain Adan Mulata is still within the officers' mess, listening to the accounts of the senior pilots.
The stories went on up to about 7:30. Then I realized I need to pick cigarettes and go and join the guys I left wherever I am, in Eastleigh there. So I disengaged from that team. Up to now, noticed nothing at all. So I looked about and saw outside a colleague of mine called Captain Njoroge was about to leave. He was on duty during the day. So now he's about to leave for his home in Southlands. So I asked him, can you please drop me off outside the gate there? And he said, fine. And as I was about to hop in, another colleague called Wachira. Wachira is a navigator. He's late now also. And he said he was the duty operations officer at the Kenya Air Force headquarters. There's an operations room at the headquarters, and he was the one on duty then. So he said, can you please drop me? Now he's taking us out of our path because we were to turn right to the gate and proceed with the journey. But he said, can you take me to the ops? So that took us into the camp now, to the headquarters where we dropped him.
Yes.
As we dropped him, we turned back, now ready to join our journey out of the base. So as we exited, I think the driver and Njoroge whispered to each other. I was sitting behind the Land Rover. And it's like there's something we need to see for a brief moment.
Yes.
So at the sports pavilion, if you know Moi base, as you exit the headquarters and turn left towards the mess, there's a sports pavilion there, the small, nice building. So they stopped there. We all joined in. It was a pre-wedding party.
For a colleague?
For one of the soldiers, not a colleague officer. I think the officers were just the two of us, most probably. So we briefly stopped. It didn't take time. We saw what was going on. I found about 30, 40 people having merrymaking and so on. But within no time, we wanted to turn back and leave and continue with our journey. So as we were now preparing to leave, it's when now at the door, some 4 or 5 guys, very heavily armed in combat with, those belts, just storming in, and stopping just at the veranda out there. The door was glass double door, large one.
At the Eastleigh Air Base, all hell had broken loose. All that could go wrong went wrong.
We are trying to come out. Njoroge was to my right, I'm here, walk out. Then these guys were just storming in. So we stopped in our tracks. They said what they were saying, so, they uttered some words, but as they did so, a young individual came from behind us, running. And he passed between me and Njoroge and stopped very close to me, just ahead of me there. And he told these guys, whatever you are doing will not work. You're wasting your time, it will not work. Something to that effect. And that's when I witnessed for the first time, automatic fire onto the individual's forehead here. The burst of automatic fire.
Yes.
From what we call an SMG, submachine gun. And I entered through here. And I looked right, it's just here next to me. I looked right. I could see the white matter and blood, just popping out one after another.
Yes.
And some of it splashing. I had a jacket on my right-hand side. I looked at it, and after a few, of course, bullets, he fell backwards behind us there.
The soldiers, under the command of Senior Private Hezekiah Ochuka, had started implementing their first part of their multiple approach to topple President Moi's government. The first part was to take over the Eastleigh Air Base, and here they were armed to the tooth ready for anything.
After that, they didn't see anything. They just shot us, locked us in, confined us there, and took up positions for us not to leave. They guarded to make sure that we don't leave. Up to now, I didn't know what it was. Of course, the shock is there. Now we are confined. We didn't know what to do, of course.
And you're not armed?
We are not armed. We were enjoying the weekend, as it were. So, about, I think, 11 or just after 11 in the night, I said, let me find out what is going on. Why can't I go back to the mess? I was getting restless. And I wanted to open the door and leave. But I did so. As I did so, these guys were watching. They were awake and watching. So they fired, you know, a similar burst of rounds, but on the wall, not to me, on the wall, on the side of the wall there, just to warn me, don't dare. So I went back in. Up to now, no one is talking. We don't know what is going on. Everybody's clamoring for space in there, and so on.
Meanwhile, at around the same time of midnight, Captain Charles Wachira and Captain Joe Mwerore had had enough of their drinking that night at the JKIA club.
We are a bit tipsy because of being tired and all that. So we said, let's go back. Just around 10, things have not started. And we came, and for the first time, they opened the gate for us and saluted us. Me and Joe. They saluted us. I asked Joe, kwa nini leo? Kwa nini they're saluting us? Na wametufungulia kuna maswali na wametufungulia gate. Kwani iko nini? Sema labda ni mood tu, labda leo hawana maneno mingi, labda ni Jumapili. Then and we were neighboring rooms. So we went to the room.
And then around 12 midnight, that is the time we were arriving at Embakasi. So that time there was no problem. We just entered. Those who were going to Langata went to Langata. We were taken to Langata. Me and Wachira were staying there. We went to our single quarters. Around 1 o'clock, we had gunshots. So we thought it's soldiers who were fighting, either in the sergeant's mess, because the sound was coming from that direction.
Then at night, can't remember what time, Joe Mwerore knocks on my door. First, I woke up, tipsy. Joe tells me, Air Force are fighting.
And then I told them, let's go and check the main gate, because at the main gate they should be able to know what was the problem. Wachira told me, no, because he doesn't know where the bullets are coming from. We should stay until in the morning.
I was so drunk and sleepy. I asked Joe, do you know who is the threat? No. Do you know who is the enemy? No. Can we sleep and fight in the morning? Actually, that's what I told you. You laughed. I said, okay. But anyway, I can't remember, because after that I fell asleep.
I told him, because I'm the adjutant. I'm the one in charge of discipline. Yeah? If there's a guards which are fighting, tomorrow morning I'll be asked what happened, and I will not be able to explain. So I put on the tracksuit and the smoke jacket. Smoke jacket is a military jacket without ranks. And I went to the main gate.
That stroll to the gate could have easily been the last for Captain Joe Mwerore, walking alone towards the gate, at the time manned by soldiers from the Ground Air Defense Unit and who were part of the rebel forces.
I find one soldier was killed. Actually, one soldier from 50th Air Cavalry Battalion, technician, had been killed.
This is now under the army?
Yeah. Then I asked the guards there, who killed this person and what is happening. So they told me, you don't ask us those questions. Go and sit at the tarmac there, or we kill you. So I started resisting a little bit. Then one of the soldiers who was sitting at the tarmac recognized me, and he told me, Afande, watakuua, kuja tukae hapa. So I went and sat down. there were so many civilians who were also sitting at the tarmac. So we sat there for about 15 minutes. The soldiers were guarding us with their G3 rifles, pointing us like that. And then after 15 minutes, we had the trucks, vehicles moving from Gado area. And then they came. They came and they were full of soldiers, and they were shouting, power, power, power. So it even confused me more. Who are these? Oh, the whole of the army was in Rodwa. Who are these people? And because they had put on fatigue, you couldn't know whether they are Air Force and, or the army. So when the last vehicle came, there were about 3 vehicles and 2 Land Rovers. When the last vehicle came, all the guard who were at the gate, they jumped into the truck and they went.
The ones who told you sit there?
Sit down. They entered the vehicle and went. And there was nobody, and it became very calm.
After moments of deathly silence, and with the Land Rovers and trucks having moved towards the city center, Captain Joe Mwerore, who alongside other few soldiers and civilians, had been left unscathed but shaken, rushes back to Captain Charles Wachira's single quarter.
So I went back to my room, and I knocked at the Wachira's place and told him I would have been killed by those people. He told me, I told you not to go.
Air Force are fighting. I mean, what? They're fighting. Even they have shot at me outside. What happened? I went out and their vehicles are going out saying, Eastleigh, Eastleigh, Eastleigh. The vehicle from Gadu. They're moving out. And they have shot at me. And that barman, do you know that barman? There's a barman who was there in our mess. And he told me he had won the ranks of a major and is a private.
Back to Eastleigh, and Lieutenant General retired Adan Mulata, then as Captain Mulata, Captain Joroge and others are still held at the pavilion, which was the venue of the pre-wedding.
About 4:30 in the morning, just after 4:30 or thereabouts, we saw it's like they had gotten control of the armory or something. So they were now dishing out arms, G3s and so on. So someone gave me a G3. I said, no, what do I need it for? This is what is happening. I said, no. They asked me to take arms. I said, no. And I told them, I'm an officer. And I even told them, if you are doing, what you're doing is a crime, and you should be taken to the guard room for it.
But how would you tell them that yet someone had just been killed? Strangely.
And that's when they said, we don't need officers, you go. The sports pavilion and where the mess is a stretch of almost, let's say, 700-800 meters. So as I was leaving now, because I was told go, I had my colleague also say, even me, I'm an officer, So we are following each other. There's a gap of like maybe 20 meters. And we kept walking. But on the main road, all the way to the mess, the soldiers, every step, they were there, armed. So the walk was strange because it was very slow, arms around you and so on. So we'll pause and tell them, we are from there, and we were told we are free to go because we are officers. We were cleared. So we kept going. Time is moving, now daybreak is there.
Explain yourself every few
Almost
meters.
every few meters.
In previously recorded accounts about the events of that night, veteran broadcaster Leonard Mambo Mbotela says that after leaving the bases in Eastleigh and Embakasi, the rebel Kenya Air Force soldiers would fetch him at his house in Ngara, taking him at gunpoint to the Voice of Kenya.
I was really scared. I was scared stiff. Is this the Kiswahili service studio? I said, yes. Are you sure? I said, yes. I've worked here. I know it is. So they told me that they are going to read some statement and that they wanted me to read. I read it that Moi's government has been overturned.
I couldn't sleep well. I woke at 5 and opened the radio. And then I heard Leonard Mabobotela saying that the military has taken over the country. And the police, I don't know, there were civilians or something like that. I listened again. It keep on coming, keep on coming.
Joe woke me up again. Said, do you know, there's a coup. I said, what? There's a coup. And they are saying armed forces have taken the government and police to stay in the house. Give me a Joe. How can them take over? They are in Rodua. Something is not right. I said, which armed forces? They are in Rodua. Hajafika because Magari, imagine those to come to, how? In Cambia, Joe, that now we started, I told Joe, let's find out now what the hell is going on.
In Eastleigh, at the break of dawn, after a long, weary night, Captain Mulata and Captain Joroge are arriving to their would-be safe space at the officers' mess, having been let free by the soldiers at the pavilion. But their woes were still far from over.
So as I was now walking towards them, I had some people say, this is one of them.
One of who?
One of who? Yeah, that's a good question, because that's when I learned they were looking for a helicopter pilot to fly them to go and assess the situation in Kahawa, all over, and give some kind of, you know, air presence in the air for them to see how the situation is evolving all the way across Nairobi and so on. So here, I murmured a few things like, I'm not even qualified, you know, bits of things here and there. But within no time, we had a Land Rover just parked outside the mess there. From similar to where I boarded the previous evening, the one that was to take me to Eastleigh, you remember? Yes. Yeah? There, but now this time it had soldiers, of course, who had worn ranks here and there. And they were armed to the teeth with that belt and everything else. So we put in there to now be taken to the helicopter squadron to fly helicopter.
What time is it? It's still dark.
No, time has moved now. You know, by the time we were walking to the mess, already dawn has broken. Daylight has begun. A bit of hustling here and there at the mess. 7 already, you know, we're already past 7. Then the squadron. So the time is moving really, really fast. So drove all the way to the squadron, came down, and they said, okay, you'll fly. But we told them, no, we don't have our flying kit. We'll not be able to even dress up for flight. Yeah, so they said, no problem. We have the gun. We'll shoot the lockers open for you. Then you'll have your kit. So we said, fine. Even if you shoot the lockers open and we get our flying kit, we wouldn't know which aircrafts are ready and serviceable. And that's when they said, that is our job, because we are technicians. We are the ones who will prepare the aircraft for you. That's when we made the conclusion that, no, I'll not fly.
As this was happening in Nairobi, the Air Force personnel at the Kiganjo Police College were also learning of the unfoldings.
We woke up Sunday morning, and I'm trying to remember who was the sergeant major, the base sergeant major, who was in charge of the servicemen, and who was in he's basically the man in charge of these men during that parade. And he came to me. He didn't go to Major Serem because he wanted to go through the chain. So he comes to me and tells me that how he said this in Swahili. And these are the exact words which he said. Hawa vijana wanasema, ati radio inasema, serikali imepinduliwa ni majeshi. I was standing next to my bed. And when he said that, I just I fell back into the bed and asked him, ati nini? And he repeated the words. Vijana wanasema, radio inasema, serikali imepinduliwa ni majeshi.
What time is this? This is morning?
This is about 6:15 or so, 6:30 in the morning. So I told him, kwenda leta your radio. So he brings me the radio. And it is playing Lingala music. And I asked him, is this VOK? He said, yes. Then I told him, hakuna jeshi hapa. Kama kulikuwa na jeshi, there would have been martial music. There would have been military music playing here, not this nonsense. And then suddenly it stops, and Mbotela, Leonard Mambo Mbotela comes and sema, tunatangaza ya kuwa serikali imepinduliwa ni majeshi, polisi wakae kama raia, and blah, blah, blah. And we are in total, I was totally, so I went and I woke up the major, and I told him, yes, the commander of the parade, and I told him this is what is happening. And from then on, we're in suspense.
And you're inside a police training college?
We're in a police college. But now the police are also very disturbed because wameambiwa wakae kama raia.
In fact, that is, I mean, how are they reacting? Because you're inside there.
Yes.
They're there.
Yes, and we are here. And we are not armed because the guns were taken. They are, and it would have been very dangerous if we were armed. Serem, akaenda kwa police commandant, the college commandant's office. And he meets some of the senior officers there. And this is what he told me later. And shortly after that, they're asking him about what is happening. And then the jets, 2 jets came flying low over the college from Nanyuki, heading to Nairobi. And they're flying low. So these guys asked Serem, the police guys asked Serem, are they armed? And he said yes, because he was a fighter pilot. I was in the transport, but he was a fighter pilot. So when he said yes, they all dived into the flower beds which was there, which was a bit embarrassing. And Serem later is telling me, and he's standing there puzzled, looking at these guys in the flower beds. I mean, what can you do if that thing drops a bomb here anyway?
Several things were happening simultaneously at the different military bases in Nairobi and other key installations in the capital. The VOK was clearly under the control of rebel forces. Senior Private Hezekiah Ochuka had himself captured the station, forced veteran radio presenter Leonard Mambo Mbotela to announce a military takeover. He later himself made an address to the nation as to the reason for the mutiny.
The economy of this country is in shambles due to corruption and mismanagement. The cost of living in Kenya today is among the highest in the world. Wananchi can no longer afford to meet the basic requirements of life due to exorbitant prices of the basic necessities such as food, housing rent, transport. Above that, Kenyans are among the highest taxed people in the world today. Wananchi, under these circumstances, our armed forces have headed the people's call to liberate our country.
In Eastleigh, Captain Mulata at gunpoint was being ordered to overfly several military installations in support of the rebel forces.
And that's when they said, that is our job, because we are technicians. We are the ones who will prepare the aircraft for you. That's when we made the conclusion that, no, I'll not fly. There was a bit of discussion there, and the decision was made to take us to Ochuka.
By this time, Ochuka had just returned to the Eastleigh Air Base, having left the Voice of Kenya under the command of fellow mutineers who owed their allegiance to him. At the base, he had taken his position at the Operations Command Center, from where he was barking orders to different actors, even as he was observing whether everything was going according to plan.
So I walked in, very brief moment. There was a lot happening in there, very many people, lots of commotion here and there. But Ochuka had a few seconds for us where he said, fine, if that's when the issue was presented to him, he said, execute them. That's that simple in a flash of a second.
At the Kenya Army headquarters, then Army Commander Lieutenant General John Malan Sawe and his deputy, Major General Mohammed Mahmoud, were planning a counter on the mutineers, but they were encountering a serious problem. Remember, all the fighting units of the army had not yet made it back to Nairobi from Lodwar. A call was made. Those in Nairobi or its surroundings would be activated. At the Embakasi garrison, where helicopters from the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion had landed from Lodwar the previous evening, army personnel were being quickly assembled for a counter against the mutineers. They too had a challenge of numbers. Captain Charles Wachira and Captain Joe Mwerore, being the only officers staying at Embakasi, were quickly joined by their boss, the commanding officer of the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion, Colonel Christopher Kitundu.
We found they have broken the armory. Yeah. They have no guns. You know, that time that's when they were in town and all that. We went to, we looked for our own duty officer. Now we know something is wrong. Now we want to go and call Rangata, an army unit, because now we know it's Gadu. While they were anti-aircraft guns, while they were Air Force.
At the Kahawa garrison, Captain Unshur Muhammad, also a pilot at the 50th ACB, but who could not be accommodated at the Embakasi garrison due to a housing shortage there, was also activated alongside other officers and soldiers.
There was an order for us to report back for duty at Embakasi. As we went along the road, we could see Air Force vehicles moving back and forth, and they would, wave at you, and we would just wave back, continue. And yes, we had heard about the fact that there was a mutiny by Air Force rebels at the time, but the situation was not very clear. So having been asked to report back to Embakasi for operational duty, once we arrived, we got a briefing from the commander. I remember the commanding officer at that time was Lieutenant Colonel Chris Kitundu.
So he came and told us, now I've been given an impossible task. I've been told by the army commander to take over Embakasi garrison.
This is where you are?
This is where I am. We are. And disarm all the soldiers. How are we going to do it? So we were surprised with Wachira because we didn't have troops.
We looked how many pilots do we have? 4, him inclusive.
So I told the CEO we have only 20 soldiers and we have only 5 pilots, you included.
Okay.
Yeah, so we were 5 of them. So then we started asking how could the 20 soldiers take over the whole garrison with over 200 soldiers. There were more, but most of them had gone to town.
But even as they were to take over the garrison, another challenge was quickly building up.
One soldier came running and told us that the GSU are coming to attack the camp. So we could not understand why GSU should come and attack a military facility. So, and because they were very near, about 300 meters, we tasked one aircraft to go and assist those soldiers by providing a suppressive fire. So 2 pilots went and cranked the aircraft, and within a minute they were there, and they saw them. So they started the firing, but all the GSU were close now to the perimeter, and they were firing to our soldiers. Yes. So this chopper went and gave a suppressive fire with the machine gun and the rockets. So the GSU could not stand that fire. They started withdrawing. They withdrew to their camp.
The same tension between officers of the Kenya Police Service and those in the military was also starting to build up miles away in Nyeri at the Kiganjo Police Training College, where the Air Force parade was stuck.
Because we were supposed to leave, we did not have our own food. And we needed some food. We've got 145 men. Yes. And we needed food. And the commandant said, no, we will not give you any food. And they started mounting, people around the camp where we are, because we are rebels.
In Eastleigh, with his execution ordered by none other than Senior Private Hezekiah Ochuka, Captain Adan Mulata and his colleague, together with whom he refused to fly the rebel soldiers, were walking their last steps to their death.
I was walking out, then I heard Sepalan say, Afande Mulata, you can go. You know?
Because he's walking behind you.
Yeah, he's just like here now. Okay. With the other 2 soldiers, like here. My other colleague is here. So I heard that. Then I turned back to him and said, Sapalan, you want me to turn my back and you shoot me from behind? He said, no, not you. Just go to the mess. And surely, we left, nothing happened.
At the Langata barracks, the 50th Air Cavalry Battalion is getting briefs. The time to bring order back to the country had come. Whether with or without the ground forces, sanity had to be restored.
Langata barracks at that time, if you remember on that fateful day, was the 7th Kenya Rifles, who were actually ordered by General Mohammed at the time to recapture, take back Eastleigh Air Force Base from the mutinying soldiers of the Air Force at the time.
So when we went there, the Army Commander had already given a directive that the 50 Air Cavalry should go and attack Eastleigh Air Base Operational Center, because he had talked to Ochuka, Senior Private Ochuka, and he has refused to surrender. And he was in the operation theater. That is where he was giving instructions.
At about 8 o'clock, briefing comes that 4 of us, 2 helicopters, 4 pilots, were tasked to go, and the briefing was go and take over the Air Force Operations Command, and the instructions were to actually attack the, we call it Air Force Ops Command, Operations Command.
We were told, this is now another mission you are going to do. You are the people who are going to strike that operation center and aircraft control tower.
And I went to the office. The phone was from Army headquarters or DOD. I think it was DOD. And somebody talked to me. I can't remember who it was because he never mentioned his name. He said, Washira, do you know where the operations of Eastleigh is? Where, yes. Where you have been ordered to go and destroy it. Where by who? By General Sabe. I told him, I know his voice. I bring him on the phone. He came on the phone, General Sabe. Yeah. So, Washira, do you recognize my voice? I said, yes, sir. Do you know where operation is of Eastleigh? Yes, sir. I'm ordering you to go and destroy it.
We took off First helicopter was commanded by Captain Wachira, retired as a major, good old colleague of mine. And his co-pilot was Captain Dulo at the time. Then I was commanding the second aircraft, assisted by Major Joe Muiruri. He was also a captain. We were all captains at the time. Eventually we became majors, rose through the ranks to become majors. And the instructions were Air Force Operations Command to be taken out. So we took off. In our internal briefing, Captain Wachira then was the team leader. So Wachira said he will go in for the attack, and me and Muiruri would be in the what they call the high bird. High bird is the aircraft that stays up, looking out, taking care of any ground fire coming up to either the attack aircraft or ourselves. So take out opposing fire while the attack aircraft is free to go in for the kill.
Over Huruma, I think Huruma, because we planned, you see that bridge Kariobangi, south, Air Force, Kona Air Force na Kariobangi, there was old road, there was a bridge happen. That's why we came row level. Actually, we were on the treetops. We are coming on the wires because we knew if God took their anti-aircraft guns there, they have them. Any bright person would go with anti-aircraft guns there. So we knew they have them. So we came low level over the fences and all that, wires and all that. We pulled up there. We pulled up there only to pull up, and then we had the operations straight ahead of us.
And we could see, people roaming all over the place, and when they saw aircraft, some of them were running around. We were about 500 feet above ground over the Eastleigh Air Force Base that morning. Then Wachira, we are up above, Wachira goes lower, circles, identifies Air Force Operations Command and says, going hot, going for the kill.
The first rocket went near Women's Service Corps. The second one hit the swimming pool next to the operations and destroyed the swimming pool. All the other 5 grouping went to the operation. It was about 2 stories, big building. They went there. I saw it it felt so bad. It just looked like a pumpkin. And what you are doing, it's a whole building because it's white phosphorus. I mean, a high explosive went.
In that confusion, we can see others running around in the base. So we others firing back at the helicopters, and we would me and Muiruri would pick them up one by one to, keep them away from firing back at us. But there was mayhem after the bombing of Ops Command at Eastleigh Air Force Base, and you could see people scatter and running around.
The 4 officers were seeing the events from above. Meanwhile, fresh from being freed from execution by Corporal Sepelan, Captain Adan Mulata could now see this new development as the 50th ACB attacked the base. A small group of assembled loyal ground troops was also taking over the Eastleigh Air Base on foot.
Walking to the officers' mess, I noticed from the left towards the what we call the base medical center side, the army had come through from the Mathare side, and they had kind of cleared the married quarters, and now they were marching the officers along the main road from our left towards the mess now. Another team of the army had cleared the mess, and they were rounding up officers up on Belia mess, in the front of the mess. And here we were now walking up towards that. Yeah. So as we were approaching now the mess, we were told, lie down, Nene. Then we were asked to join the other officers. So basically, I spent some time with the officers. These other ones also were marched and brought to us. We were all, bundled in one place, while still out there, because they didn't allow us to go anywhere. The army now didn't allow us to go anywhere, while crowded out there, being guarded is when we witnessed now the 50 ACB helicopter come, that should be about 10, 11 there, come and fire a few rockets into the CAF ops room. A few rockets got the target and started smoldering over time and eventually burned. But hardly maybe 30 minutes or an hour after the, the army commotion, when the army kind of secured the space and so on, we saw the Buffalo take off in what we call the disused runway.
At that moment, as Wachira climbs out, we notice in that confusion, a Buffalo takes off. So we see a Buffalo turning right and going low. So because we're the high bird, I tell Captain Wachira, there's a Buffalo that has just taken off.
And then I called the control and asked them, there's an aircraft taxiing in it. Is it friendly or enemy? Can I engage? Because I had the machine gun which I could just move close and just engage it. I was told stand by. I asked again, stand by. I was still there. I asked again, stand by. Then I was just circling there. Then until that time it has taken off. It is below me. It's flying towards the river, Mulolongo. Then Kanokitudu comes. Shoot it down, it's enemy. By that time, it had gone on Palekwa Mulolongo. That's when Ochuka was running away. My boss was in the toilet. Kitunu was in the toilet. That's why I was being told stand by, because the others could not give a go ahead. When he came to tell me shoot them down, the enemy, already it had reached the crest. I lost it.
So we tried to chase him, and we chased him low level, 100 feet above ground, and we are right behind him. But it was a little too fast for us, for a helicopter. It's, of course, a lot slower than the Buffalo. And it disappears over the national park, low level, 100 feet above ground, all the way towards the Tanzanian border. We chased it up to the southern edge of the national park, and then at that moment we realized he was disappearing, and we veered off to land back at Langata Barracks, and we reported the progress of the mission we had just undertaken.
We went there and we reloaded. Now we have systems, and we were told that VOK has not been taken. It's the resistant VOK.
It's still under...
Yes. So they needed one helicopter to go and support them. Actually, it was the aircraft with George, and we had started the aircraft. Only on takeoff we saw Kanokitud running to us, because there was the communication, he could not hear us, and he had already given verbal go ahead and destroy the VOK. He came, if he was 1 minute late, we would have gone to destroy the VOK. Yes, but he told us it has been taken. He came out running. Then we were just taking over, and we saw him, and then we said, what's wrong with that? We put it down, came and said, don't go.
Then when I came out, everything was calm. Then I saw General Mahmoud Mohammed there and said that everything is under control and that the government is still on.
Nani says, Botella says, hapa tuko na Major General Mahmoud Mohammed, and my heart sank at that point, because I said, this is real. He's coming, he's been picked to become the spokesman and announce this thing. This is my feeling out there. And he says, yeah, that is, I thought it's part of the coup. I thought now, my goodness, it is a real coup. And General Mohammed tells him, no, hii ni serikali ya Nyayo, sema hii kitu tumemaliza namna hiyo, something like that. And you know, I came back to life. I said, oh my goodness, you know, at least this is now.
Late morning of 1st August 1982, it was clear that the mutiny had failed. But that was the beginning of a new chapter for those who were in the Air Force. From Captain Mulata at the Eastleigh Air Base,
we were all bundled, like 50 plus people, into what is even today the TV room. The only difference today is a bit extended, not like the way it was that time. And we used to sleep on the floor, all of us. And the young ones like us ended up sleeping where? At the corridor out there, on plain, I don't know, floor, with very minimal bedding. And it was a tough 2 to 3 weeks for most of us.
Wow.
In the evening, about 7-something, when the president came on the radio.
By the time the president is making an address, you're still in Kiganjo.
We are still in Kiganjo, we're stuck there. And the president is announcing now, hawa ni maharamia wa jeshi la angani.
Nataka niseme kwamba yale yaliyotokea.
Now we are all rebels. And that's why the police are getting, agitated.
A team that had on Friday been on a parade in honor of the president, but on a Sunday just 2 days later, they were captured as prisoners and suspects. After days of investigations and vetting, the chief coup plotters were arrested, most of them being taken to Kamiti Maximum Prison and others to the Naivasha prison. Captain Unshur Mohammed was part of the military officers placed in the multi-agency probing team, where he says so much was revealed in the course of the investigations.
The planning was actually done at a house that belonged apparently to Hezekiah Ochuka in Umoja Estate, and if I remember correctly, it was house number K27.
He also reveals fresh reports from the investigations of the only one soldier who took part in the mutiny but had a plan B to exit the country.
His name was Gigi Ngatia, if I remember correctly. Gigi Ngatia had a plan B. He seemed to be, from what we gathered during the interviews of the rebel soldiers, is the only soldier who had a plan B. He planned, if the coup failed, then he had his car fully refueled. He had gotten himself a car, fully refueled, ready to cross the border into Tanzania. And true to what happened on that day when the coup failed, Gigi Ngatia jumped into the car full of gas, drove across the border into Tanzania. He carried his Kenyan passport. At that time, I believe maybe Kenyans didn't need a visa to go to Sweden, and he flew out of Tanzania all the way into Sweden. I believe he's still alive today. He must be a Swedish citizen, an elderly man. We're talking of 42 years ago. So that's the only guy who was smart enough to have a plan B and did his own things and had probably enough money to take himself across to Tanzania and on to Sweden. So if he's alive, maybe you'll follow up the story and find out whether he's still there.
Captain Unshur and Captain Washira resigned from the military on the same date in 1988, both going into civil aviation. They had been promoted to majors at the time of their resignation. Currently, Washira practices farming, and we caught up with him at his farm in Yatta. On his part, Unshur is still in civil aviation, being the chief executive officer at Bluebird Aviation Company based at the Wilson Airport. Captain Joe Mwerure served for a few more years before resigning as a lieutenant colonel. And now, he is practicing farming in Nderi, Kikuyu constituency of Kiambu County. Captain Farah also resigned, having attained the rank of colonel, and is now the chairperson of Bluebird Aviation. On his part, Captain Adan Mulata served for 40 more years after the coup, rising through the ranks to become a 3-star general, retiring as Lieutenant General Mulata in 2022. Today, he heads the Prospect Peace Institute Africa. The powerful recollections of the men who saved what would become Kenya's longest presidency, the story of a coup deterred, 42 years on. Ibrahim Karanja, NTV.